Congratulations, you've been transferred to the Death Star. Seriously, most people in the Empire would kill for this opportunity. Higher salary, better uniform, more responsibility, direct contact with Imperial leadership, and you get to live on the most powerful machine ever built. An armed moon with enough firepower to wipe out entire planets. From the outside, this looks like the promotion of a lifetime. And that's exactly what makes it so dangerous, because the longer you work on the Death Star, the more likely it becomes that you'll die in a very creative way, not because of the rebels, not even because of Darth Vader, but because the Death Star might be the single worst employer in the history of cinema. And the worst part? At first, you don't even notice. The job interview. The first question is actually, how do you end up on the Death Star in the first place? Picture the job interview. Why do you want to work for the Empire? Well, I'm looking for a secure workplace. Technically, that's even true. The Death Star is extremely secure. For the Empire, not necessarily for the people inside it. The job posting probably looked fantastic. Career opportunities, housing included, cutting-edge technology, direct collaboration with Imperial leadership. Which sounds a lot better than you'll be living inside a giant death trap with management issues and planet-destroying weaponry. Those details rarely make it into the listing. You don't work there. You live there. On the first day, everything looks impressive. Massive hangars, stormtroopers everywhere, endless officers, millions of employees. You're now part of the most important project in the galaxy. The problem, you don't just work there, you live there. The Death Star isn't a military base. It's an artificial world, 100 miles in diameter. If your shift starts on the other side of the station, you're probably spending more time walking than working every day for years. Picture waking up in the morning. No sky, no sun, no weather, no fresh air, just metal, always metal. The Death Star has roughly the same atmosphere as a parking garage designed by military strategists. The good news, you never have to commute again. The bad news, you're already at work forever. The first promotion. After a few years, things are going well. You're promoted to team lead. More responsibility, more influence, better pay. And this is where the real problem starts. Because on the Death Star, competence is surprisingly dangerous. As a regular technician, nobody knows your name. That's excellent. Invisibility is a career advantage in the Empire. But if you do good work, you get promoted. If you get promoted, you get responsibility. If you get responsibility, you have to make decisions. And if those decisions go wrong, Darth Vader learns your name. That's the moment every employee should actually be afraid of, not getting fired, not getting transferred, getting noticed. On the Death Star, career development is essentially a horror movie. Management. Most companies use performance reviews. The Empire prefers a more direct feedback system. Admiral Motti disagrees with Darth Vader once in a meeting. Immediately after, he suddenly stops breathing in front of all his colleagues. Vader force chokes him. And Motti only survives because Tarkin steps in. Picture that moment. Not from Motti's perspective. From the perspective of everyone else in the room, you're sitting there with your notepad, maybe taking notes, and suddenly a colleague is being telekinetically almost murdered over a difference of opinion. After that day, nobody is probably volunteering anything in meetings ever again. And this is where the real problem begins. Nobody says what they actually think. Nobody reports risks. Nobody pushes back, because in a system where criticism can get you killed, everyone learns very quickly to stay quiet. The second promotion. You keep climbing department head, your own office, more authority, more responsibility, and a significantly higher chance of dying. Because now you realize the Empire might have the worst safety department in the galaxy. The Death Star has essentially no railings anywhere. Open reactor shafts, bridges hundreds of stories high, maintenance pits, bottomless drops everywhere. And nobody seems to think this is a problem. The craziest part, someone had to design this station. Someone presented those blueprints. And some Imperial manager apparently said, skip the railings, it looks more intimidating. probably the same guy who was later put in charge of workplace safety, if there even was one. The Death Star is a space station where you can simultaneously be shot, force choked, and accidentally fall into a reactor shaft. The Empire really values multitasking. The cafeteria. And let's take a moment to talk about the cafeteria, because millions of people live permanently on this station. They have to eat somewhere. Picture sitting down for lunch after a 12-hour shift. Pilots next to you, officers, technicians, and at the table next to you, someone is probably casually discussing which planet gets destroyed next. How do you make normal small talk in that environment? So, what are you up to later? Not sure, might help out with the genocide. The Death Star is probably the only workplace in the galaxy where a Monday morning meeting doesn't even crack the top 5 most unpleasant things about your day. You're probably helping with the evil. And now it gets uncomfortable because most people on the Death Star probably weren't monsters. Not everyone there was Palpatine. Not everyone was Vader. Most of them were probably technicians, engineers, pilots, mechanics, admin staff, regular people. And that's exactly what makes the station so unsettling. Because massive systems rarely work because everyone inside them is evil. They work because millions of ordinary people are just doing their jobs. Maybe you're just checking energy readings. Maybe you're maintaining cooling systems. Maybe you're processing paperwork. And at some point, you might even forget what all of it is actually being built for until Alderaan. Alderaan! Up until that moment, you could still lie to yourself. You're maintaining reactors, processing reports, checking sensors, just doing your job. Then an entire planet suddenly disappears. Billions of people gone in seconds. And somewhere, an Imperial technician is sitting in front of a screen thinking, wait, are we the bad guys? The answer is yes, very likely. And this is where the Death Star stops being funny, because suddenly it's clear. This isn't a military base. It's a terror weapon. The laser doesn't just destroy planets. It destroys every illusion about what the Empire actually is. Quitting is complicated. Of course, you could say, just quit then. Great idea. Small problem, you're on an armed moon in the middle of deep space. You can't just walk home. You can't just hand in your corporate card. You can't even dramatically storm out of the office. A lot of people there are probably stuck. And the higher they've climbed, the harder it gets to leave. That might be the darkest feature of the entire system. At some point, people aren't there because they want to be. They're there because they don't see any other option. The last day on the job. And then comes the worst day of your career. The last one, alarm sirens, explosions, chaos, rebels attacking. Most employees were probably completely calm at first. Why wouldn't they be? You're on an armed moon, protected by millions of personnel, thousands of turrets, an entire fleet, and Darth Vader. Who could possibly destroy something like that? The answer, a farm kid in an X-Wing, following a religion that the entire leadership had been mocking for years. At some point, the warning lights come on. At some point, the power starts flickering. At some point, the first employees realize the Death Star might actually lose. And then, something fascinating happens. The most powerful machine in the galaxy dies the same way a lot of companies do. Not slowly, suddenly. 1 second, everything seems invincible. The next, the whole system explodes. And maybe that's the real reason the Death Star is still so fascinating today. Not because of the laser, not because of its size, not because of Darth Vader, but because it's the perfect caricature of a system that values power over people. A place where employees are afraid of their bosses, where safety is an afterthought, where nobody takes responsibility, and where every promotion increases your odds of dying in a spectacular way. From the Empire's perspective, the Death Star was the greatest achievement in its history. From HR's perspective, it was probably a total nightmare. And from the Rebels' perspective, probably the most successful mass resignation in the history of the galaxy.